I will call to order the Monday, July 14th meeting of the Verona Common Council, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we will have the roll call. Ms. Schofield, if you would, please.
Alderperson Diaz.
Here.
Alderperson Doyle.
Here.
Alderperson Linder.
Here.
Alderperson McGilvery.
Here.
Alderperson Reekie. Here. Alderperson Steiner.
Here.
And Alderperson Touche.
Present.
And Alderperson Ures is absent and excused this evening.
Thank you. Next, we have public comment. If there's anyone that is here this evening that wishes to speak, there should be a sign-up sheet at the podium. And if you have not signed in, please do. And then for not only our benefit, but also for the benefit of those watching at home, if you would state your name and address, please.
I look to be the only one signing up, so I think I'm first on the... Thank you. My name's Tess O'Brien. My address is 221 Westridge Parkway in Verona. I am a board member of VACT, and I come to you tonight as a representative, certainly, of the board. But I come to you tonight in a different capacity as well. And I am coming to you tonight as a parent of 4 kids who have been through just about every program that VACT has to offer. And I'm coming tonight in this whole process because, as you know, VACT is looking to grow and expand and hoping to build a new building. And as we move through this process, I know you as a city council are going to start to really considering this and looking at what it does for our community, what it does for all of the members of our city, and what impact it has, and how you can be a partner in all of this. And I sat through the Finance Committee meeting, or part of it, just a few moments ago, where they were talking about the financial issues. And I know those issues will be issues that will be talked about and talked about and talked about. What we thought might be helpful tonight is to give the City Council a bit of a different perspective, of a perspective of a parent, and a perspective of what does a new building and a new space mean for the people in the community. Now, I know I am one person, but I will tell you, I speak for hundreds of families that have gone through VACT. I mean, I see a lot of the parents here who've had kids that have gone through VACT. So we didn't fill the whole room with hundreds of parents as an effort to save a little time for all of you. But I will tell you, if they were lined up behind me, they would say the same things. You would hear the same themes over and over and over again. And it would be no small group. I mean, it has affected many, many, many people in our community and communities around us. So I thank you for your time tonight, just to give you a little perspective from where I stand. VACT, and for those of you who don't know a lot about it, have several shows a year. Some of the biggest shows that we have, though, are our kids shows and our teen shows. And those have continued to increase and increase and increase, mostly because the desire for them has increased. We have kids who come from near and far to audition for these shows. And more and more and more kids come every year, both from our community and the communities around us. When you have kids in VACT, what you see is that you have kids who are shy, you have kids who are very outgoing, but all of those kids come together, and I will tell you, they share one thing. They all get a chance to be a little bit in the limelight. They get a chance to be on stage. They get a chance to do costumes and set and backstage and support roles and chorus. They get to be part of a big theater team. And as everybody knows, public speaking, it's a tough thing. But when you take someone and you put them on the theater and you put them on the stage over and over again, public speaking becomes a lot easier. These kids have become poised leaders in their schools. They've become confident. And most importantly, what I see in my kids, they feel very important. And I think that's important as a community, to provide something where your kids can come and feel important. I have 2 kids in high school now, and as I watch all the temptations that those kids face between the various things that are put in front of them, I think to myself, places like VACT is exactly where we want our kids. We want them there on the Saturdays building the set. We want them there on Friday nights at dress rehearsals. We want them with people who are good role models, a place to be. And that is exactly what VACT is, whether it's they're there for the theater or some other community activity that'll take place in the building. For some of these kids, VACT is their only exposure to the arts, and I will tell you it's an unbelievably intimate exposure and very professional. VACT does a great job. The kids aren't sitting in seats just watching a play, they are the play. And for many of these kids, it's the one exposure they get to cultural arts. I find it amazing, frankly, that on a Friday night, I can watch a young man stand up on the stage and sing and dance, and that the next day on Saturday, I can walk over to the Ball Diamonds and see him crack a baseball. I mean, it is an invaluable experience to give this well-rounded opportunity to all of these kids in our community. And the final thing I will say about it is this. My husband and I work downtown, in law firms downtown, and I will tell you time and time again, people stop me that I know around the downtown area to ask me how their kids can get into Verona Theater. It is amazing. I mean, this year we have had several partners in our law firm come up to me and say, boy, I see auditions are coming, can you give us any advice? They are from Shorewood, they're from Madison, DeForest, Wanakee, they are from all over. There are not very many opportunities like this in any other communities. It is a unique one, and I know it because my daughter Ellie has searched them all out. She has looked everywhere for them. We are a leader in this. Verona touches more than 12 communities all over the area, more than 30 schools in our area, and we do a really good job of it. We are a leader in theater and a leader in the arts. Our only problem right now is that we have so many people that are interested that want to come, particularly kids from our community, that it's tough to accommodate them all. I mean, we have space issues. It's tough to get them all in. When Terry Dvorak does her children's theater auditions every spring, there are more kids than she could possibly take. We have over 100 kids audition, and she tries to fit lots and lots of them in the show, but it's tough. So when you consider this and you move forward, I hope that you will give it some serious consideration in terms of the perspective of the families and the individuals in the community, and most importantly, the kids in our community. I appreciate your time tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Tess.
Hi, my name's Lynn Vilker, and I'm at 5754 Longwood Lane. I'm actually in Fitchburg, but I am here as a parent from VACT, as one of those people that comes from a very nearby community. My kids all go to Verona Public Schools, and we come here to Verona constantly. My kids are involved. They used to be involved in the swim team here. They're involved in Little League. They've been involved in the girls softball program and the boys soccer. So I have 2 children. We've only been part of the Verona Area Community Theater for 4 years, and so we're newcomers. The families that have gone through this program, span the lifetime of this theater, and the 10 years that the Children's Theater has been there. We've been there for 4 of them. This is the one organization. All those other organizations, they're great organizations here in Verona. We feel very lucky to be a part of them. But this is the organization that my children will say has made all the difference in their lives. So it's through the accepting, especially the non-competitive nature, all of those other things, there's an aspect of competition that's involved. This is the one thing where even if you're competing for a role, you're still cheering that other person on. So there's a real sense of camaraderie, so that even if you didn't win the part, you are right there cheering for your friend who did. So my kids have learned how to be independent. They've grown incredibly. They've learned to stand up for themselves and for others. We've seen this happen both at school. The way they've worked with so many adults at VACT from the community that come and volunteer, that they then feel very comfortable speaking with adults. They also learn to show respect for others. They work as a team to accomplish just incredible things together. And also, as my daughter ages through the program, she's able to mentor other young kids, which is just really an incredible thing to see her do. My 13-year-old daughter credits her experience and her in her participation in VACT to help her battle some serious issues. Without going into them, she was at a point where she didn't want to go to school. She tried out for a play, and Terry cast her in that play, gave her a lead role, and it changed her life. Just changed her life. She got her confidence, her self-esteem. I promised myself I wouldn't be emotional, but she found her voice through theater, and with that, she found a community that could accept her. And so the Verona Area Community Theater and this thing that you guys have here is just, it's been a lifesaver for her, and I really feel that way. So because of the limitations on the current space that you've heard Tess talk about, and we talked about earlier at the Finance Committee meeting, you know, there are limitations in the reach that the organization has right now, not only for the theater, but for other things in the community, you know, that could be available for them. So my children dream of the day when they can participate year-round in a children's program. Right now, we're limited on even how often we can have the children's programming, because you just can't have as much as you'd like to do. So they, you know, the drama camps that Terry and team do, shows, the classes, you know, we're really looking forward to all of those things. So we look forward to having you help us make this dream possible.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that wishes to speak?
Good evening. I'm Carl Curtis. I think I know all of you already. My address is 631 Maple Road, but my business address is 120 West Verona Avenue. I'm the executive director of the Verona Area Chamber of Commerce, and actually I want to comment very quickly on 3 items today. The first one was I wrote a letter to the mayor, and I wanted to thank the city personally for the help you all gave us putting on our first hometown days this last month. Without the expertise and assistance of folks here at the city and the various groups here in Verona, it would not have gone nearly as smoothly as it did, and it went about as smoothly as it possibly could go. And I pointed out in my letter to the mayor, Dave Walker from the city of Verona and Sergeant Jesse Christensen from the Verona Police Department for just being outstanding and being able to go out of their way, provide us with any help we needed, answer questions, even some of the dumb ones I asked as a first-time fair coordinator. They were just outstanding to work with, and it really makes us look forward to doing the festival again in 2015 because everyone's such a wonderful help. The second thing I wanted to mention is that as a chamber, we're very excited to see development going on in the southeast side of town. The hotel proposal is very exciting to us to bring more business to Verona, as well as the other projects that are going on down there. And thinking long-term with some of the new hotel spaces we have coming up here in Verona with the new property over on West Verona Avenue, eventually going up, and potentially this one, we may want to re-examine the way we handle room tax. But that's a long-term conversation, but I want to just kind of plant the seed now. That's, you know, the potential is there to triple room tax revenues here in Verona. We want to consider hiring someone full-time who can be a tourism director, either as a chamber employee or a city employer, but that's a conversation you can have later. And finally, I do want to chime in on the community theater question. You know, one of our jobs at the Chamber of Commerce is to market Verona as a destination. We do that now primarily through our sporting endeavors: soccer, mud runs, Little League, the bike trail. We have an opportunity to add a new tile to the mosaic of Verona with the Verona Area Community Theater project. I know, having been involved in the community theater for not nearly as long as many of the people who are sitting behind me here, they serve a community of children and adults who maybe, like I was when I was a kid, was an athlete, but you know, couldn't hit a three-pointer, or had like the worst arm in the history of organized baseball. What was said before was absolutely true. It gives them an opportunity to develop themselves, come into themselves, and not just kids, but adults too. I know I had the tremendous opportunity myself to write a musical. I'd have VACD put it on. And not only was that incredible fun for me, but one of the coolest things about the whole experience was, well, a first-time musical was a bit of a tough sell for some folks, and we had a lot of first-timers in the cast. And in the 3 years since then, those names keep popping up in show programs here in Verona and elsewhere, be it in the cast, in the crew, in stage design, those kinds of things. The people who get involved really get involved and really commit themselves. So we would also be opening the door, as I started with my comments, to making Verona an entertainment destination. I know this building could be used by VACT primarily, but they've discussed having it available to other groups potentially in the city, other options. The chamber could even probably use it once in a while when it's not being used by VACT. And I see it as a potential to be a real jewel for the community if we can all get behind this and make it work. I keep thinking of the Stoughton Opera House in Stoughton, and how that has come to be a real staple of the Stoughton downtown community. And the last comment I want to make is I was here for part of the Finance Committee meeting, and I heard some talk about accommodating the fire department and accommodation for parking and accommodation for this and that. Trust me, if that group can accommodate a bad dancer like me in 7 different shows on a stage that's smaller than this room, they can accommodate your parking needs. They will work with you. So both as the director of the chamber and as a member of the group and the former president of the group, I strongly encourage you to work with the community theater and make this project happen. It's going to be good for everybody involved, not just the community theater, but the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Any other public comment this evening? Any other public comment? Going for my customary 3 times. If there is no other public comment, we will close. I will just make a brief comment and say that this item does come up later on the agenda, so we will probably have we'll definitely have questions and comments here, but we may have questions for you as well. Tess, Lynn, and Carl, you all did a great job in your speaking this evening, so thank you for being here for that. I will say this, that we heard tonight about Verona being a leader in the theater area, the area of theater. We talk about that when we have recreation programs that we're known as a leader in that area. We look at ourselves as a leader as far as how we have the quality of the buildings, any new development that's occurring, and we're very proud of that fact. And one thing for me is really important is when we look for public-private partnerships, I don't think that government can do everything, but when we partner with the private sector, and we've done that in a number of different areas, including the community, the Little League fields, Epic with the Madison Metro bus system, those are really good examples that we can use for other communities that they ought to be doing as well. So looking forward to further discussions. With that, we will move on. Included with your packet were minutes from the June 23rd meeting of the Common Council. What is your pleasure?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, seconded by Ms. Reekie. All those in favor of approval, were there any additions or corrections to the minutes? All those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and the minutes are approved. The only thing that I wanted to mention under mayor's business is that I still have people thanking me for the work that the city and others did in the recent tornado that we had, and also received one thank you, which I forgot to bring along tonight that I was going to read, but it was a thank you from a couple that had just moved to the city 3 weeks prior to the tornado, and they said they've never seen a community come together and the assistance that was provided, and we talked about that once before, but just again, thank you to everyone who was involved in that effort. With that, we'll move on to the administrator's report. Mr. Burns, please.
Yes, thank you. I have several updates this evening. First of all, related to the tornado event, it previously reported that representatives from the Small Business Administration would be out within the city touring the damage. That review did take place, and the initial word we've heard back is that the city did not have a sufficient level of uninsured damages beyond what people's insurance would cover, where the SBA is going to get involved. We had previously heard that FEMA would not be involved in this incident. The one area of funding that we are continuing to pursue is the Wisconsin Disaster Fund, which allows for reimbursement of municipal costs related to providing public safety and debris cleanup. Dane County has taken the first step of filing a county-wide application, and then we would anticipate working with the state on the second step, which would be supplying our individual costs. So I will keep the council updated as we go through that process. In the matter of the lawsuit that was filed against the city by the IAFF union, the city attorney has filed an appeal as authorized by the city council. The deadline for that appeal filing was today, so that was filed last week. But also as directed by the city council, the city attorney had contacted the attorney for the plaintiff regarding settlement discussions. An initial meeting was held last week. We're working on scheduling a follow-up meeting prior to the end of the month, likely the last week of the month. And I would anticipate following that meeting, then that matter will come back for the council for an update on the status of those discussions. For the fire and EMS station project, bid package number 2, which includes the bulk of the construction elements for that station, bids are due tomorrow at 2 p.m. Meeting of the Ad Hoc Public Safety Committee will be held this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. at City Hall. One of the primary purposes for that meeting will be to review the bids, the updated project cost estimate, and to make recommendations on the alternative bid items. And then those bid package number 2 items and the alternative bid items would come to our next council meeting on the 28th for potential action that evening. At the senior center, we had received notice that our program director, Chris Nye, is going to be resigning. He's going to be leaving the city to take a position as the senior center director for the Fort Atkinson Senior Center. So while we're sad to see to Chris leave, we're certainly recognize that this is a very good move for him and wish him the best as he takes on that new role. I have worked with the Senior Center Director on putting together recruitment information for filling that vacancy, and that item was posted today. We are accepting applications through the 31st of this month for the program position at the Senior Center. And then finally, there will be a meeting of the Dane County Cities and Villages Association that'll take place next Wednesday, the 23rd. That's a 7 a.m. meeting in Mount Horeb. And a couple of the items for discussion at that meeting will be the CARPC budget, due structure, as well as looking at the CARPC, Capital Area Regional Planning Commission budget, and some of the discussions taking place with that process. And I'd be open for any questions or clarifications.
Are there any questions for Mr. Burns? Ms. Doyle?
What's the exact location in Mount Horeb for that meeting?
I can send that out to the full council.
Other questions for Mr. Burns? Seeing none, thank you, Bill. We will move on then to the engineer's report. Mr. Gunlock, please.
Thank you. Update on construction projects ongoing in the city. Lincoln Street reconstruction and water main replacement. Contractor has completed all the underground utility replacements and will be beginning street reconstruction tomorrow. It will take him approximately 3 weeks to complete the removal and replacement of the existing base course material. Following that, curb and gutter and concrete replacement driveway approaches will be placed. That'll take a couple of weeks, and then probably a week of paving, asphalt paving. As soon as the first layer of asphalt is in place, the street terraces will be restored, and then the asphalt surface course will be installed. Project is scheduled for completion by September 5th. Cathedral Point Phase 4, site grading and street grading is underway. Utility construction is anticipated to start in 2 to 3 weeks. Scenic Ridge Phase 6, site grading has been completed and the sanitary sewer installation is approximately 60% complete. Following the sewer construction, the water main will be installed. All work in this development is scheduled for completion by the end of September. Prairie Oaks Phase 3, contractor has completed the sanitary sewer and water main construction, and those utilities have passed testing. He is currently working on the storm sewer, and shortly will be proceeding to the street construction. Street work should be completed by the end of August. And finally, Locust Drive Phase 2 construction. AECom is currently reviewing the construction plans for the second phase of Locust Drive. It's anticipated that construction will commence mid-August and be completed by the middle of October. So that completes my report for this evening. If there are questions, I try to answer them.
Are there any questions this evening for Mr. Gunlock? Not seeing any. Thank you, Bob.
Welcome.
We'll move on then to committee reports. We'll begin with the Plan Commission. Mr. Linder, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R-14-036, approving a conditional use permit for Lot 25 at a Liberty Business Park to allow a group development consisting of 2 flex buildings.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Touche. We are now open for discussion or any background.
Mr. Sayer, you want to take the background?
Sure. Andy, if you could turn the screens on. So the request tonight is a conditional use permit to allow a group development on Lot 25 of Liberty Business Park. A group development is any project that has multiple buildings located on it. So the request is to construct a 26,500 square foot building, as I am indicating right here. An existing building is already under construction on the lot, which is located west of the site. The building itself will be very similar in design to the existing building currently under construction. The Plan Commission did hold a required public hearing and recommended approval of the conditional use permit to allow the group development.
You have heard the background. We do have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, I will call the question. The motion is to approve Resolution R-14-036. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder?
Thank you, Mayor. Next, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution R-14-037, approving a conditional use permit on lots 15 and 17 of Liberty Business Park to allow for a 4-story, 66-foot tall hotel at 846 Liberty Drive.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Touche. Mr. Linder?
I think Mr. Sayer is going to add to this one as well.
Sure. Once again, Andy, thank you. Just for correction, I think this is on lot 16 and 17, but if you want to clean that up, I think you may have said 15 in your motion.
We will take care of that.
Okay.
Mr. Touche, you're okay with that as well?
That's fine.
Okay. So the request tonight is to allow the construction of a 231-room hotel located on the northwest corner of Fortune Drive and Liberty Drive. The whole hotel itself would be a Hyatt house and Hyatt Place. It would have both an extended stay component to it and also as a traditional hotel where you have just a room-by-room basis. The request tonight is for a conditional use permit, and that's for the actual use. The hotel use is a conditional use in that district. And also the building itself will be 66 feet tall. The ordinance allows a maximum building height of 45 feet, but you are allowed to exceed that height requirement with an issuance of a conditional use permit. So the motion tonight is for the height exemption and also for the hotel use itself. Planning Commission did hold a required public hearing for this item and recommended approval to the Common Council.
We have a motion. You've heard the motion and the second. You've heard the background. Are there questions or comments? Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see we have Mr. Green here as well as Mr. Slavy. I wondered if you could speak to the timeline for the possibility of getting this started.
My name is Mike Green. I represent Mr. Reinke, the developer of the property. My address is 1 South Pinckney in Madison. In response to the time frame, I would say we're probably anywhere from 3 to 9 months from starting construction. We still need to finalize plans with the franchise. They were waiting on the land use approvals as well. So once we do that, you know, it kind of lands where we fall in terms of winter. So I think that would be the scenario that we would be looking at today.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments, as long as we have Mr. Green here? Thank you, Mike. Other questions or comments from council members? I would just add that since last Monday's meeting, and after the Verona Press came out, I've had a number of people talk to me about how they really like the appearance of the hotel. And they have said, make sure that it ends up looking as they said it would be, because they really, really like how it looks. And I've heard that over and over. So people are pretty excited about this opportunity for the developer, as well as for the city and those people that would, for the city of Verona and those people that would use it. So, other questions or comments? If not, the motion before you is to approve Resolution R-14-037, approving a conditional use permit on lots 16 and 17 of Liberty Business Park to allow for a 4-story, 66-foot tall hotel at 846 Liberty Drive. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder?
Thank you, Mayor. Next, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R-14-038, approving a certified survey map to create 3 lots in Liberty Business Park to allow for the construction of a hotel.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Reekie. Mr. Linder?
Mr. Sayer?
The CSM will create 3 lots. Basically what the CSM is doing, Lot 1 will be a combination of lots 16 and 17. It'll contain the hotel. There'll be some remnant lands that are left over on the north side of that, leftover lot of what's left of 16, and that will go into what's going to be Lot 2 and 3 of the CSM, which are the former lots 15 and 14 of the Liberty Business Park plat. All the lots meet the zoning requirements. Staff has no concerns with the request, and the Plan Commission did recommend approval of the CSM.
We have a motion and a second. You've heard the background. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve Resolution R-14-038, approving a certified survey map to create 3 lots in Liberty Business Park to allow for the construction of a hotel. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Mr. Linder?
Thank you, Mayor. Next, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 14-847, approving a zoning map amendment to rezone Lot 27 of Liberty Business Park from suburban industrial to suburban commercial.
We have a motion by Mr. Linder. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Touche. Mr. Linder?
This is a zoning map amendment to allow for the rezoning of Lot 27. The lot right now is zoned suburban industrial. Pretty much everything on the east side of Liberty Drive is suburban industrial. Andy, if you want to pop the map up on the screen, that'd be great. The reason for the rezone is that the applicant is requesting to construct a 17,000 square foot office building, or excuse me, commercial building to be located at the corner. This is actually a revised site plan. The Plan Commission had some conditions of approval on the actual site plan itself, so it has been revised. This is the revised plan. You know, part of the reason they're requesting the rezoning is this what is called a hard corner. This will be a future signalized intersection in the future, so there'll be a lot of visibility here, a lot of traffic in the future. The building itself was approved by the Plan Commission, but the request is mostly so to allow for the construction of this building. The city's comprehensive plan does identify these lands as a non-residential land use in the future. Obviously, the request to rezone it to suburban commercial is consistent with what the comprehensive plan it says. Plan Commission did hold a required public hearing and recommended approval of the rezoning of this property to suburban commercial.
We have a motion and a second. You've heard the background. Mr. Touche.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Adam, as I'm watching this development come into the Liberty Business Park, have they presented like a master plan for the park? And you know, I'm just envisioning myself driving into it and seeing all these different properties. And I'm just wondering, does the developer seem to have a theme that they're going towards? And you know, I'm just thinking about what they do now is going to impact more of what's going on there, and it seems kind of random to me.
Mr. Sayer?
So yeah, what I put up on the screen, if you take a look, this is actually currently the plans that we have out there. We have Flex Building 1, Flex Building 2, the hotel that was recently discussed, and obviously the project for the rezoning tonight. I know they are in the process of taking a look at a master plan, how it could lay out, how the rest of the uses lay out in here. You know, that's one of the conversations that staff has had with the developer, of having that overall vision of taking a look at what's going on. I think from what we've seen so far, it's, you know, the uses are laying out, they're compatible, they work, it's appropriate. But it is a question that I know staff has said of, okay, what, you know, let's sit down and have that conversation. And they've been very open about doing that as well too. They want to have that conversation, but obviously they have immediate projects right now that they're trying to address. But you know, that is, like I said, that is a conversation that staff has expressed, that of what is the overall look of it. Obviously, with the hotel building and the mixed-use building, there is an Italian type flair to the architecture. That's kind of the theme they've kind of started with the entrance of this. They've indicated the lot to the west of this as well would have a similar kind of Italian look to kind of play upon the hotel and this mixed-use building as well. But those are conversations we're going to have in the future with the developer as things move forward, of what are the future uses as they come forward, and are there any changes or any modifications that we need to take a look at that time. But we've kind of said, let's look at the big picture as well. So I think your question is valid and appropriate, because we've had the same conversation too.
Fantastic, thank you.
Are there other questions or comments? Ms. Ricky?
Have the staff recommendations for changes been taken into account in what was presented tonight?
Mr. Sayre?
Yes, from a site plan standpoint, I know I reviewed the plans, also Mr. Gunlock reviewed them as well. We feel they meet the conditions of what the plan commission put on there for the building itself, and we're comfortable with that. We've told the applicant that about Wednesday or Thursday this week when we saw the plan. So we're comfortable with the building, how it's laid out now, and it meets the requirements of what the plan commission set forth.
Further questions or comments? Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I note under your recommendations, so you've got some pretty strong language in here about postponing action on the zoning amendment and site plan review, and direct the applicant to revise the plans to relocate the drive-through lane to the east side of the building. I'm looking at it now, and it looks pretty much like it's on the west side of the building. So your language is pretty strong, that you believe it should be on the west or the east side. Where are we at now?
Mr. Sayre?
You know, obviously the plan commission provided the recommendation of to keep the drive-through where it is. As part of the discussion with the plan commission, that's why the one row of parking on the south side was lost as well too. So I think, you know, I had that conversation with the plan commission. I think there was, you know, it was a good discussion that we had. They felt that the drive-through should stay on the west side of the building. They compromised on pushing the building to the south and relocating that by removing that row of parking and shifting the building as well too. So from a staff perspective, it does meet the recommendation that came from the plan commission. But those items were discussed at the plan commission.
Okay, great. So one other thing I would like to add, you know, having been part of the process for, I think, about 6 years with trying to get this moving, I'm really happy that the applicant and the people who are working with the applicant are bringing projects forward. I think this is great for the city of Verona. We've talked about it prior councils, how important this development could be for the city as far as the tax base with the amount of acreage that's out there. So kudos that you're going to get this thing rolling, and I'm excited and hopeful that we will continue to see this kind of thing coming forward to help us build our tax base. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvray. And just to respond a little bit to your first question as well regarding as we call it, the drive-through. What we were informed last week Monday is that it really is a pickup window, not a drive-through. So the developer has told us that the ordering would be done for the most part over the internet. It's not like people would drive up to the window and then order. At least that's what we were informed at the Plan Commission meeting. So not a real what we think of as a drive-through. It's really a pickup window. And as Mr. Sayre said, we made some adjustments to the parking and shifted the building, and at the end of the evening, we were all a lot more comfortable with what we heard. Mr. Touche.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in line with the pickup window versus ordering window, I don't know, is there any way to ensure that actually happens?
Mr. Sayre?
The actual use of that space will have to come back to the Plan Commission and Council. So I guess it's probably a better conversation to have when the applicant comes back with that actual tenant itself. And I don't think they're in a position right now to name who that tenant is, but that will take its own conditional use permit for that drive-through and for that use itself. So probably a good conversation to have maybe just a few months down the road.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Again, I would just repeat what I said before. When people saw photos of the building, they really liked what they saw. And just a final comment for those sitting in the audience and those watching at home. This is another perfect example of where we do a lot of the work, or a lot of the work is done through the committee system. We're talking about a 26,000 plus flex retail building. We're talking about a 231 room hotel going into the city. And it may appear to some that there's not been a lot of discussion, but there's been discussion at the committee level. There's been a tremendous amount of discussion between the city staff and the developer to get where we are today. And certainly there will be a lot more discussion before, you know, all the approvals are final. But again, I just wanted to make that note that it may appear to people that we are really approving some substantial development without a lot of conversation. But those discussions have happened. They have occurred. So with that, we have a motion, we have a second. The motion is to approve ordinance number 14-847, approving a zoning map amendment to rezone Lot 27 of Liberty Business Park from suburban industrial to suburban commercial. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Linder, is there anything else from the Plan Commission?
That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on then to the Finance Committee. Mr. McGilvray, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 9B1, I'll make a motion to approve payment of the bills in the amount of $609,686.60.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvray. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Doyle. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you. In the way of explanation, two of the larger items from this month's bills, the first being to the Fitch-Rona EMS District for our second half of operating apportionment. That amount is for $155,010.50. And secondly, to Hammersley Stone Company for our Lincoln Street reconstruction project, $105,066.54.
You've heard the list of the major expenditures. Are there any questions or comments for staff or the Finance Committee? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve the payment of bills in amount totaling $609,686.60. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. McGilvray, is there anything else from the Finance Committee?
I would say under our new business, which is the discussion for the potential purchase of the Verona Area Community Theater Facility at 405 Bruce Street. We did take that up at the Finance Committee meeting on both this meeting and in a prior meeting. It was a general consensus, at least from that body's point of view, that we should keep the process moving and continue discussion. We will have the opportunity to speak about it tonight as this body, but I thought it important that you know that we all felt it was relevant.
Thank you very much. With that, we will move on to Public Works, Sewer, and Water Committee. Mr. Touche, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 9C1, I would like to make a motion to award the contract for the 2014 surface treatment project to the lowest bid submitted by Scott Construction Incorporated of Lake Delton, Wisconsin, in the amount of $329,236.64.
We have a motion by Mr. Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Diaz. Mr. Touche?
Thank you. Scott Construction has already done a lot of work for us in the past. They've proven to be a very good contractor for the city, and the bid amount was in par with past amounts, and the committee felt very comfortable awarding the contract.
Are there questions or comments for city staff or the committee? Seeing none, the motion before you is to award that contract in the amount totaling $329,236.64 to Scott Construction. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and that has been approved. Mr. Touche?
Under item 9C2, I would like to make a motion approving the professional services agreement for design of a traffic signal and intersection improvements at the Verona Avenue and Lincoln Street intersection.
We have a motion by Mr. Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Diaz. Mr. Touche?
This agreement is for the engineering and design that's involved in the traffic lights at the intersection of Lincoln Street and East Verona Avenue. In addition, the agreement will provide engineering services to modify the signals for emergency signaling preemption on East Verona Avenue and Enterprise Drive. This really comes about because of our new fire station and timing and controlling the lights, both sets of lights, to be reacting in the same way when there is a call from the fire department. The breakdown of the costs, traffic analysis, $3,150, the surveying, $2,075. The survey map is another $2,300, roadway design, $15,500, traffic design, $13,000, traffic signaling timing, $3,500, meeting and project management, $5,550, totaling $45,075.
We have a motion second. You have heard the background information. Do you have any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve a professional services agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. Touche, anything else from Public Works, Sewer and Water Committee?
That is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Under old business, we have approval of 2014-15 liquor licenses for Avanti's and also for the Heights. And Mr. Burns, would you provide the background, please?
Yes, we have two liquor licenses for potential action on their 2014-2015 license year renewals this evening. Those are for Avanti's Restaurant and the Heights. The city had approved most of the liquor license renewals within the city at its first meeting in June. These two were not acted on at that time due to outstanding payments due to the city and due to applications not having been filed in time to have them placed on the agenda for that meeting. At this time, all of those requirements have been met. The applications have been filed. Outstanding payments due to the city have been satisfied. And normally, these go through the process of going to the Public Safety and Welfare Committee with a recommendation to the council. In reviewing this with the city attorney, his recommendation is that since the city council is the approving body, even though the Public Safety and Welfare Committee was not planning to meet this evening, that these could and should be taken up by the city council since the obligations have now been met. So both of these items are available for action by the Common Council at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Are there questions, comments, or any potential motions at this point? Mr. Touche.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make a motion to approve the 2014-2015 liquor license renewal for Avanti's.
We have a motion by Mr. Touche. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Doyle. Mr. Touche, anything to add? Or are there questions of the committee or staff? Mr. Diaz?
Thank you. Just to confirm, so they're totally, all their paperwork and everything is totally fine, and then there's no reason not to approve this, basically, is what I'm asking.
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, that is correct. All of the requirements for the license renewal have been met at this time.
Further questions? Mr. Touche?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, it's a shame that that the approval of this liquor license had to come after the license expired. The owner of the license, you know, basically wasn't current on their bills and responsibilities to get their license approved. They made a lot of requests to us to have special meetings, you know, and to accommodate their inability to meet the requirements for the renewal liquor license. But on the flip side of the city, my opinion is, you know, there are penalties built in that the owner did pay, and they did get caught up, which, you know, is meeting their responsibilities. But unfortunately, I think the people who paid the most were their employees, and that to me is a real shame. You know, it's, you know, for their staff to not be able to work because the owner was negligent on paying their bills, I think is a real shame. But I do think it is a valid reason to approve, though.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on the motion? And this motion was specific to Avanti's. So seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We now have the liquor license renewal for the Heights. Questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. McGilvery?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2014-2015 liquor license renewal for the Heights.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvery. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Diaz. Questions or comments on the motion? Mr. McGilvery?
And again, like Mr. Diaz, everything has been met now for the Heights in the approval process.
Mr. Burns?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. We are on to new business. We have discussion of potential purchase of the Verona area community theater facility at 405 Bruce Street and a lease of property for a new facility. Mr. Burns, I would ask if you would give the background, please.
Yes, thank you. I can give the background on this item, and there are a couple of pieces to this. The Verona Area Community Theater, as we had heard under public comment, is looking at a new facility. As part of that, it has been suggested that the city could look at purchasing their current facility for use by the Public Works and Parks Department, and that the purchase of that facility by the city could help finance construction of the new facility. The second part of this is looking at the potential lease of city-owned property at the southwest corner of the fire and EMS station site, as that site is being master planned for the new station to accommodate a potential building on land that would not otherwise be needed for that facility. Kind of the main questions as I see before the council at this time is there interest, or what's the level of interest in potentially purchasing the current site? What's the level of interest in a potential lease of the new site? If there is interest in both of those, what is the council's comfort on the potential timing? That's one of the things that the community theater is looking for, so that they know how they can proceed with their building plans and fundraising. And then finally, details related to the potential cost if the city were looking at acquiring the facility, and terms for the lease and other things that would be considered as part of the lease. So just to provide a little bit of additional background on those topics, the city had taken a look at the current facility. It's approximately 5,000 square feet. It's located immediately north of the city's Public Works facility. Parks and Public Works have looked at that building and identified that they could use that both for vehicle and equipment storage as well as a parks maintenance shop. With their current Public Works facility, they're essentially at capacity at this point as the city has grown and we've added staff and equipment over the years. The Public Works Director has indicated that if this opportunity did not become available, he likely would not have been requesting additional space in the 2015 budget, but likely within the city's next 5-year capital improvement plan, additional space or an expansion of the current facility is something that would be looked at to accommodate future growth. We have looked at what it would take to retrofit this facility for city use. There would be some modifications, including an overhead door, a floor drain system, some additional tools that would be needed. The estimated cost for that would be approximately $25,000 to $26,000. The proximity would work out very well with our current facilities, and they would anticipate that we would not have administrative staff located or a public reception area located in this building, so there would not be a need for additional staff to staff the facility, but to provide workspace for parks and public works staff as well as storage for equipment. As far as the site that's been discussed potentially for the community theater facility located on the Lincoln Street site, as the city had gone through the site planning process for the fire and EMS facility, that facility is going to be located along Verona Avenue with parking to the south of the building. And there is an area on the southwest corner of the site that's currently in green space south of the current parking lot, backing up to the Military Ridge Bike Trail that is not needed for the new facility. Some of the initial site plans did show a proposed building on that site to see if it would fit and work with the stormwater and the other requirements there. Those site plans do show that could potentially be accommodated on the site, and the stormwater plans and stormwater detention area for the fire and EMS station site are sized that they could accommodate this additional impervious area from a building at that location. Some of the items that were discussed were that there would need to be configuration of the parking lot to be able to accommodate uses and likely a shared parking agreement to accommodate uses for both of the buildings while still making sure that adequate spaces are preserved for emergency responders that may be responding into the station either during the day or after hours to respond to an incident. As far as a potential use of that facility, representatives of the community theater, as they had mentioned tonight, are interested in having that being a community resource. They said they would be open to discussing an agreement with the city where that space in the new facility could be used for city programs such as our recreation programs, dance-based music, other classes, as well as making room within that facility open to other community uses if they construct their new larger facility at this site. As far as potential costs, we're not at a point that we've identified a specific dollar amount for the purchase of the building, but as a starting point, Community Theater did obtain a quote for the cost to construct their existing building in today's dollars. That cost estimate was $403,500. They've also indicated that they've invested about $25,000 in landscaping and other site development on the site. And as I mentioned, the city's identified approximately $25,000 to $26,000 of additional costs for us to modify that facility for our usage. The other cost item that we're still looking into is if this facility were to locate adjacent to the fire and EMS station, what the additional cost would be for an expansion of the parking lot to be able to accommodate both uses out there. Staff does feel that there are some advantages to trying to coordinate the parking lot construction rather than constructing one and coming back in at a later time and adding on to the parking. And based on our bids that we received, we do have some quantity information on the cost for that parking. We need to take a look at that and report back a number of what it would cost to build out that additional parking area. I did have a conversation with the city assessor earlier today about how you would approach valuing a building like this. It's not a straightforward answer. He's going to do some more looking into that, but currently the building on Bruce Street is not assessed. It's a tax-exempt use, and because it is a building owned on land leased by the city, it's subject to the lease agreements, and it's a unique space for the use. There aren't a lot of good comparables out there, but he did say that he would take a look at some different options and information and report back, and that's something that we could consider. One other item I wanted to mention before we turn it over to questions and discussion was there was a question that had come up at the Finance Committee about the timing of when the city could make a decision and how that fits in with our budgeting process and our borrowing process. The city is just starting its 2015 budgeting process, and likely that process would not be completed until late November of this year. And we normally do one major borrowing project each year, either late spring or early summer, and we've just completed that process for this year. In discussing this project with our finance director, one of the suggestions she had is if there is interest in looking at a project that doesn't fall within that normal budget and borrowing cycle, would be to look at a state trust fund loan. That's a loan program that's available to municipalities through the state. It's generally used for smaller projects where it doesn't warrant doing a full competitive borrowing project. Has relatively attractive rates, and it's very flexible in the timing and the terms that you can set up. That process to do a state trust fund loan is about a 30 to a 45-day window, and that requires an action by the city council to make an application and then to finalize the project. So that's available as an option. Obviously, if we were to go that route, that's going to have an impact on future budgets, and that's a discussion that we'd need to have and look at, and is the council comfortable with that? But at least it does provide us an option where we have some flexibility on the timing. So again, I think the questions are, what's the level of interest in the current facility for city uses, level of interest in looking at a lease agreement for the fire and EMS station site, and then any comments that the council could provide that would be helpful for staff are what your feelings are on the timeline process and cost and things as part of a lease that potentially would be of interest.
Mr. Touche.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I try to look at the big picture of things, I think it's really convenient that where VACT is today will benefit, has the potential to benefit our public works. I wonder how long they've been in that building. I don't remember that number, but it gets me thinking about the future facility. You know, so they've outgrown this one that we're considering. They're gonna build a new one. How long until they outgrow that? You know, so I'm just trying to look down the road. What would the city do with that building? Because if we're leasing the land back to VACT, so I'm just trying to look at the big picture and not really what it means today or tomorrow, but what it's gonna mean 10, 20 years down the road. So I'm just wondering if that had been considered. I doubt that it had been considered, you know, using the current facility right now was originally considered, but I think it would be wise of us to at least try to look ahead and maybe advise future councils.
Good question. Mr. Steiner?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm a fan of the VACT, and I have been having meetings with small groups and individuals throughout District 3 for the past several weeks since this item broke out. I've also attended the open houses for the fire department, and I've also attended the ad hoc committee meetings for the fire department. And I shared this information with all these folks, and the conclusion that came out was, and it's riveting, these two groups are not compatible to share a parking lot. It's a bad idea. From the fire department point of view, these people are responding to emergencies. They are flying into a parking lot, looking for an orange spot to park in, meanwhile thinking ahead about what they need to do to get the fire truck out to put out a fire. From the VACT point of view, love the response I heard tonight in the public speaking. There are going to be children in this facility. A lot of adults too, that may be thinking about other things. And they're being dropped off or being picked up in the same parking lot. What are the odds of something terrible happening? Slim and none, but it could. A fire call occurs. At the same time, you have an event taking place at the VACT. Think about that picture. This is not a good idea. So my response to all these individuals, of course, who are saying these things to me in these meetings is, well, what should I give as an alternative plan? And we came up with one. And the park people didn't like it. But most of the people that were in my meetings or individual meetings or coffee clutching thought it was a great idea. Down in the northwest corner of Veterans Park on Lincoln Street is about a 7 to 8 acre open, flat spot. Now, for those of you that don't know where this is at, there's a shelter there, a nice parking space, and a lot of acres of land that are being used for athletics, family get-togethers, and fun time for kids. But there's about 7 or 8 acres in the northwest corner there that might house a very large building compared to what was proposed or even talked about. Mr. Touche adhered to it when he mentioned about the future. We're not building for 10 years out. I think we're building out, like you said, Mr. Touche, much further. Now this spot has water at it. It has sewer hookups. There might be some little issues there with the drainage, mill pond or whatever that little drainage ditch is called. But I think it's a spot that would possibly be a better site for a building for the future of our VACT. It's away from the emergencies of the city. It's on a street that is a community, neighborhood, street, dead ends at Sonetti, Volker, Bridge, and a nice little cul-de-sac down there. Nice neighborhood. Good neighbor for this VACT to be put in this site. They could be as tall as they wanted. I haven't measured it. I went out and stepped it off though, and it took me quite a while to step it off. But I think there's at least 7 acres there, in my humble way of measuring. And that's what I would like us to think about as we make this decision that's going to affect our city in many ways for a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Other questions, comments? Other questions, comments?
Well, we can,
Mr. McGilvray?
absolutely. A couple things I'd like to say. I'm glad to hear that Mr. Steiner, it sounds like Mr. Steiner is supportive of the idea, at least in moving forward with finding a way to have the VACT grow. Whether or not it's in this location, obviously that would remain to be seen. I would like to say I think it's, I'm excited because I've been wanting to see this before this body for quite some time, and it just hasn't worked from one point or the other, but it's finally here. I'm glad that we're going to have some discussion. I hope I'll get to hear from the other alders as we talk about this a little more. But, you know, one of the things that my family's also benefited from it. We heard from members of the public who've had kids who've benefited from it. I've got one child who's benefited from it, but really the other 2 have gotten to watch her and watch her grow as an individual, which really a lot of her friends have come and been very supportive, and they're not part of the theater, but they're all very excited to see it. And I think we can't lose sight of the fact that cultural element is really, that's something that's very rare in a community our size. I was sitting at the Music Man a couple weeks ago with my daughter, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my wife, and I was thinking to myself, okay, here we are, about 11,000, 12,000 people, and we're at a live performance, a very good live performance, in a very small community. And it's not just live from the point of view that you have adults and young adults and children in this. You also have people who are in the music pit who are performing this music, and it's fantastic. Most people never get that kind of experience, much less in a city of our size, and we get it on a regular basis. So I think any way that, as a community, we can find a collaboration between the public and the private. In this instance, you can't lose. I've watched the benefit that the VACT has just brought to my life, but also the lives of all these other families that just wouldn't have had it. And it kind of astounds me in our small community that we get to have that. And it's such a success story. There are lots of communities who try to do it and can't do it. And because of the individuals who are involved in the VACT and have been for a long time, they have been as successful as they are, and they continue to grow. And we're here talking about, you know, what's going to happen in 20 years when they outgrow that. What a wonderful thought that would be, to have that theater group. But more importantly, if you think about what the VACT is proposing for the use of the building, it isn't just the VACT. The Recreation Department has for many years at the parks level has talked about having a need for more space for dance, for more space for other recreational programs, where we heard Zumba tonight and a couple other things, yoga. Whatever it is, there is a value in that collaboration that we as a community, as a body, public body, we wouldn't be able to invest public dollars to build the facility the rec department needs. But in this instance, with this public or this private body that is willing to do it and share the facility, that's another win-win that you have. It's hard to put a dollar value on that, but if you wanted to just break it apart and say, what would it cost us to build this building all by ourselves? I don't know what that is, but it's probably half the cost of the building they're proposing, and I could say that we wouldn't be able to do that budgetarily as a city for quite some time because we have other responsibilities. But here we are. We have this great opportunity in front of us. So if we can find a way to get this done, I'm very excited to be a supporter of it. And I hope you all will continue to find a way to keep this process moving. If we need to move it through a budget process, great. If we can do it through a state trust fund, then that's great with me too. But the VACT will certainly have my support moving forward, and I think in general the community is very supportive of this idea. I have had 0 negative comments. The only time I've ever heard anything negative was when it got the opportunity to place it in a neighborhood, which it seems to me Mr. Steiner's proposal would probably put this more of in a neighborhood setting. That's the only time I've ever heard anything negative about the VACT, and it certainly wasn't VACT. It was just the thought of having a building in their neighborhood. So, again, hoorah. Thanks, guys.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Stoyle?
I can definitely appreciate Alder Steiner's concerns about the compatibility of the uses, and definitely want to see more details on how the parking situation would play out, but do see some definite financial benefits to the city in taking care of parking all at once if we are to go forward with this plan. And would as well like to see some more details about just the overall financial impacts of this site and development. But I've over and over said that I would like to expand the cultural opportunities that we have here in Verona, and definitely believe that the VACT is an asset to our community. As Alder McGilvery said, we are very fortunate to have these opportunities here for our children, whether it be them participating in the actual productions or just getting the opportunity to see the productions. It's an invaluable asset, and I wholeheartedly support it moving forward. I wonder how the timeline, whether we do this before the budget process, how that would impact our public works facility and their needs, as well as the theater. And I don't know if Mr. Reeder or the theater would like to speak to that end.
Ron, do you want to speak? That came up a little bit during the Finance Committee, but do you want to speak to that issue as far as your needs?
Thank you. I had a conversation with Jack about this same question a couple weeks ago. Certainly, I have not explored with an architect how we'd actually add on to our facility. I've reached out to the facilities director at Epic to help me get a very ballpark cost, if I could, and he has. I have talked with him today. I've talked with staff, and we're probably, when we would add on to our facility, we're probably looking at an addition of about 10,000 square feet. Adding on some additional offices at that facility. A real ballpark number, I was looking at today's numbers of about $2.5 million. And that would be adding about 10,000 square feet. That probably would be looking out for a life of that facility of about probably anywhere from 15 to 20 years. Based on our site constraints, once we've added onto our facility for 10,000 square feet plus, we're out of sight. Between stormwater detention and other needs, our outdoor storage facilities, our salt storage, in the next 15 to 20 years, even adding on to our facility, we're going to be out of room on that site. Luckily, I'm not going to have to worry about it. But we would add on, and I just need to get more serious about this. Not that I'm not a huge fan of the community theater project. I think it's a great project. I think it'd be a wonderful addition for our parks department to utilize their facility and postpone adding on to our building probably for about 5 years. Now, please don't hold me to that, but that's an estimate. We're, like I said, I've talked with our staff. We're hoping that that would postpone our addition to our building for about 4 to 5 years at a cost of about $2.5 million. So certainly I'm more than glad to utilize my friends at Epic and get a lot better number here in the next week or so for you people, but that's where I'm at today. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Doyle?
Just to add on, so I guess my takeaway from that as far as the timeline is you're obviously making do with what you have right now, but I would assume maybe sooner rather than later might be good to add on this storage space, just as far as if you were to have the VACT building.
If I didn't, Elizabeth, if we were not to have this additional area, in my 2015 capital budget, I would be including some money to look at adding on. We're adding, in 2015, we're adding one additional patrol truck just because of miles of street that we now are responsible for. And we're beginning to double park vehicles, and it's just, we're out of space. I never dreamt in 2001 when we moved in there that I would be, before I retired, that I would be coming to you and saying we're going to need to add on to our building. My dear friend, Mr. Gunlock, his dad visited our building in 2001 when we had an open house, and his dad said to me, this building would hold a lot of cabbage, and that's what I'm thinking. I'm never going to run out of space, but we are out of space, and we're totally out of office space, and not that we can't survive. But certainly we need to start thinking about that long term.
Ron, there is nothing on the agenda that allows you to talk about retirement, so we will hear no more about that. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Linder.
Thank you, Mayor. Listening to Brad's comments about the location, I've been to the VACT when we had pick up kids or drop off kids, and there's a lot of traffic around there at the current facility. I don't know if how that affects with additional parking, because there's really almost no parking lot existing place. But I guess it's something I hadn't thought of either about the location till today. I don't know. It's something I guess like I said, I hadn't thought about. I could potentially see people trying to leave all at one time, like it happens, and somebody trying to get in. So it's just something I think maybe we should think about as we go forward. As far as my support, a lot of you people talked about the stuff that I would probably back up if you guys did a lot more eloquently than I could. But my kids I've had 3 kids in this program for some of them 5 years or so, I think 5 or 6 years, and it's a great time. I think it's a great opportunity for the kids in the city that we didn't even know we had till we started going to it and just enjoy it so much. So I'm supportive of the idea for sure, and hope that can go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Linder. Mr. Diaz?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a general statement of support in favor of the VACT. Before this meeting, I was convinced that they were a valuable part of the community, and after hearing the public testimony, I'm twice as convinced. And I just think that whatever happens, we need to find a way to make this work for the VACT and for the city. I do share some of Alder Steiner's concerns about parking. I think that anyone who's ever parked a car has probably at some point violated parking laws. I know I have. And I would like to think that people would at least respect the seriousness of a fire department and hopefully would not park where they shouldn't. But I would want something, and I'm not an engineer, but something in the design where this was taken into account, and it would make it very difficult for people to do the wrong thing or potentially having different exits or something. But I do think that the city needs to find a way to make this work, and I hope we do.
Thank you. Mr. Touche.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if it was clear, but I support it, whether it's on this site or any other site in Verona. I think if we, for some reason, do not put it next to the fire station, I think we should act quickly in deciding where it goes and how we can help the theater, because they are going to be doing fundraising if they haven't already started, and there's a lot of effort going into that. And if we are going to potentially help them place it somewhere else, I think we as a leadership body need to help them and help them quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ricky?
That's along the lines of what I was going to say, just that I'm also very much in support of the VACT being able to continue in Verona. And from what I see in the drawing is that it's actually 2 separate parking lots for the VACT building and the fire station. So, you know, hopefully people would abide by is that correct?
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, that is correct. The concept is that there would be 2 separate parking lots that would be connected. There is actually a revised site plan from the one that's in your packet that I can send out to everyone tomorrow that actually changes the location of how they would be connected somewhat. But the concept would be that the VACT building, if it's located on that site, would have their own primary parking lot. There would be the fire station parking lot. I think the question would be, how do you work out the potential for shared parking so that if you had a larger event at either of the facilities, that there'd be some parking that could be shared by both uses while still preserving spots that are dedicated for emergency responders. And there was some discussion about that, both at a staff level and at the ad hoc committee level, that perhaps through signage, colored concrete, different measures you could do to try to make it very clear where those emergency responder parking areas are. But that's, I think, one of the details that would need to be worked out.
Ms. Reiki?
So I'm also in support of the theater being on this property or elsewhere. It would be nice, I think, to have it closer to maybe the highway on Verona Avenue, if that land could be purchased from the county or something along those lines, because then it would have a very prominent place in the entry, one of the entries into Verona. I have no idea if that's feasible or possible, but if this is discovered to not be feasible, I think that the potential would be there to build a even bigger building, possibly a bigger theater on a different spot. I just don't want it to, like Mr. Touche said, postpone the breaking ground, so to speak. So I think that the timeline issue, I think that this proposed building site is probably more conducive to a timeline that you're in support of. So I worry about that and making sure that the city doesn't interfere with the timeline.
Mr. Touche?
Thank you. Is it reasonable for me to ask the city to look at sites that we can act quickly on and propose those?
I would just say that the city, I haven't heard anything that we've narrowed it down to one site. I know we're looking at this site a lot, but certainly we're open to any discussions. I'll leave my comments on the end. I've got a couple I'd like to make, but certainly we can consider other sites. But as I mentioned to Mr. Vach prior to this meeting, is that if they're going to move forward, one of the first things that they need to know is that there's a consensus to move forward. It's very difficult to raise money when you don't have the commitment from all the parties. And I think what you've heard tonight is that there is a commitment to move forward. So, Mr. Touche, that somewhat answers your question. I mean, as a city, we certainly could consider other sites, but I think we want to get this project moving. I mean, I know we want to get this project moving. Ms. Doyle?
I definitely want to take the time to ensure that we're carrying out this project correctly. It sounds like there's a decent amount of support for the theater and wanting to find a good site for them. I wonder if there's anyone with the theater that might speak to how long they've been looking into potential sites already at this point. From my understanding, it seems like it's been a pretty long process up to this point as well. So I'd just like to keep that in mind. As it's great to say in theory, you know, let's keep looking at more sites, but I believe they've put a lot of legwork into that.
Okay, Mr. Reeder would like to make a comment.
Hopefully I can answer that question for you people. I think we have been talking with VACT for approximately a year. I think staff has been struggling with this for selecting a site or trying to select a site for probably 9 months, maybe, Bill. We've looked at certainly a site down in the Fireman's Park. One of the issues that we have there is soil conditions. The other issue is, in order to fit it in down there, we would have to acquire property from the Matz family. We looked at a site out in the Westridge neighborhood, which did not go very well. So I really think that we have done our diligence on this of looking at various sites, and quite frankly, the site that we're talking about this evening have come up in a staff meeting with our street superintendent. He goes, here's this new fire station, why don't we put this building here instead of struggling trying to get it down at Fireman's Park or in these other areas. So I really do think that we have spent a great deal of time in looking and selecting a site. Clearly, we haven't considered the site that Mr. Steiner brought up tonight. That's the first time I've heard about it. We would, unfortunately, with that site, we're losing a soccer field that we're already short of. The other thing that we have that would concern me with that site is the location of our interceptor sewer going through there, which would be a very expensive process to move. So, not that I'm discounting that. This is first I heard Mr. Steiner mention that site, but there are some constraints there too. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reeder. Mr. McGilvray.
If I could just add on to
Go ahead.
that, also because the old administrative building, that site is currently vacant. We originally, before we spoke about this site, we talked about that site, and there was just some space constraints in order to get a building of that size and have adequate parking. We weren't able to get it onto that site either, so that's kind of how we came to the site we're at now.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Just as I indicated earlier, I'm very supportive of us moving forward, and I would like to see this put as one of the priority issues that we have moving forward in the next couple months. Again, Ron indicated that we have been talking about this for a long time, especially at the staff level. Mr. McGilvray, talked about the most recent performance that he was at. I was there the same evening, and had an opportunity during the intermission to talk to one of the musicians who I've known for about 15 years, and she indicated that she's not from Verona, but she likes to be here because of the quality of the performers, the quality of the musicians, and that's why she comes. And it's great. And when I talk to her parents, they say, yeah, we're always going to Verona. We're always bringing her to Verona, but that's great. So again, I think that what we've heard tonight is the consensus is to move forward. And let's keep this project moving. Let's have conversations between VACT and the staff and elected officials so that we can move forward. This can be a win-win for all of us, not just for the city, not just for your organization, but for the community as a whole. So I'm really looking forward to moving forward. So we will be talking soon. Mr. McGilvray.
For the sake of the public and the VACT, I wonder if we might just define a little bit of a timeline for them moving forward, because I know at this point they are certainly ready to start a fundraising campaign, but again, until they have an idea of a location, it's going to be hard to do that. So while it seems like there's consensus and interest in moving forward, I wonder, there's probably a couple separate issues there. Location, number one, and a land lease, if that's something the city decides to do. And then number two, whether or not the city is interested in purchasing that piece of property. So if we could put a timeline on that and make that available to the public and the VACT, I think that'd be great.
As I indicated before, we will make this a priority. We will begin those conversations between VACT and the city immediately. It will be our goal, if we do not have it as a future agenda item at one of the August meetings, that we certainly have it on the agenda for the first meeting in September. So we know that you need, some conclusion so that before you can talk to people about raising money. And as I indicated before, it's much harder for people to donate if they don't know for sure that that commitment is there. So hopefully in August, if not the first meeting in September, we will have it back on the agenda. Mr. Burns, anything to add?
No, I think nothing to add at this point. I've been taking notes during the discussion. I think we have a lot of good items to follow up on, and certainly we'll work on that as quickly as we can to get those answers and work with VACT with the goal of bringing this back as soon as possible.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being here. The speakers, again, you were great. So we will move on, and there's no action on this item, other than, as we indicated, we will have it on a future agenda. We have discussion and possible action regarding the potential uses for the city's old library building at 130 North Franklin Street. Mr. Burns, if you give the background, please.
Yeah, thank you. And with this item as well, we're not anticipating that there would be a final decision tonight, but wanted to start the discussion. As everyone knows, Sugar River United Methodist Church is looking to relocate from space currently leased from the city at the former library building at 130 North Franklin Street. They're in the process of purchasing the Wildcat Lanes property on West Verona Avenue. They are still going through the completion of that purchase process. That property's in receivership, and they need to have action by a court to finalize the purchase of the property. I've spoken with them recently, and it's still their hope that purchase is completed and they are able to move out of the current facility by the end of August, which is the end of our lease term. They do have the option to go to a month-to-month lease term following the end of August if they would need that additional time, and they have that ability to do that up through the end of December, and at that point any further action would come back to the city for approval. At this point, we've already received inquiries from people that are interested in knowing what the city plans to do with that facility. We've had 2 separate church groups that have approached the city to ask if the city would be making that property available for other leases, for a church to come in there for a temporary period. We've also had a comment from the superintendent at the school district that if the city is looking at what to do with that property, the school district may have some interest and they would like to be included in the conversation. So at this point, I just kind of wanted to get a sense from the council of what people's interest in the property, or if there's direction for staff to explore various options. Kind of conceptually, I see the options as recommended in the downtown plan. This is identified as a potential future redevelopment site, and also potential right-of-way for the potential future alignment of East and West Harriet, which would also create a redevelopment parcel. If the city's not in a position that we're ready to proceed with the redevelopment or that extension at this time, one option would be to sell the property. Another would be to look at a lease arrangement with one of those entities, or obtaining proposals from other potentially interested parties, and do another short-term lease with city maintaining control of that site. I think that would be staff's recommendation, is that we somehow keep control of this site because of its importance in the downtown plan. But I did want to have the discussion with the council, and as we receive inquiries, know what to relate to people about potential uses for the property.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. And this is one of the items that we had talked about, that Bill and I had talked about, that if we were going to have a committee of the whole meeting in the future, that we would have it on the agenda. But we really wanted to have some discussion. Bill did a very good job on the background. Personally, for me, I don't think we should be in any hurry to sell the property unless we have an offer that we really can't refuse, because it is a very key part of the downtown area that we could be looking at as far as redevelopment. So my personal opinion is that if we could find an acceptable lease, that that is the manner in which we should move forward. I'm not saying that it has to be that way, but that would be my personal preference. And see, Mr. Diaz, you had your hand up?
Thank you. I just want to say I'm in agreement with staff. I like the idea that we can just kind of mark time with it and bring in revenue, and then wait until there's a development project or something in the area, so we can help kind of move forward with the downtown plan. Whereas if we sell it, it might be really difficult to put it back kind of in play for the downtown plan. And anything that brings in revenue is well, not anything, but a lot of things that could bring in revenue are fine by me, and the lease worked out fine in the past, so I would go with what staff thinks.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. I was searching for the other thing that I wanted to say, and I couldn't quite think of it, but as far as the availability of the building, anyone who has asked me, I've said that because it is a publicly owned facility, that if we're going to put it up for lease or whatever we decide to do, it will be an open process. We're not just going to, just hand it off to one organization and say, yeah, go ahead, we're going to accept your offer. So it would be an open process. Other questions, other comments? Ms. Doyle?
I agree that especially because of its location, this is definitely a property that we should hang on to as long as we can until we really know what kind of opportunities could come to fruition in this area. I know Van is currently searching for a new site. Do we have any idea kind of what their timeline falls into things? Obviously, that's not the end-all be-all for what we do with this property, but it would be good to take that into consideration.
Mr. Burns, do you have an update on that?
Yeah, I've had several conversations with representatives from Van over the last few months. My understanding is they are still currently searching for a new site that would work. I know there are some concerns about moving into the St. Vincent de Paul site, which was at one point proposed. There was discussions about looking at a site within the city of Fitchburg, since a number of the people that they serve are actually located in Fitchburg. Latest I've heard, it doesn't necessarily look promising that that particular site is going to move forward. So I know they are still searching, and I think that is as part of the thought process as well, that in order to provide some time as they continue to search, if the city contains ownership of this building and potentially leases it to someone that would allow for that space to still stay there, it provides some additional time as they continue that search.
Other question, Mr. Linder?
So that building is fairly old. Are there any mechanical things that need to be done to the building, like new roof, new HVAC, walls falling down? I don't know.
Parking
Yes
lot?
to all that, or
Parking lot?
parking lot? there you go.
Mr. Burns or Mr. Reader?
I was just going to comment that from the lease revenue that we do take in, the majority of that goes towards the city's debt service fund, but we have held a portion of that back, both for utilities on the building as well as maintenance issues. Recently, we have made improvements to the entranceway. The parking lot is in a condition where something needs to be done if there is going to be continued use of that building, and that's what a portion of those funds could go through. I'm looking to Mr. Reader if there are other items that you're aware of that may be pending.
Certainly, there is, we're going to have to do something with the roof for, well, the past 4 or 5 years, we've patched the roof together to the point where we're going to have to do some significant work to the roof. The way the addition of the library was tied into the old library, the valleys are so flat, and it creates, we got heat tapes up there in the winter, but it creates a lot of problems that need to be permanently fixed. Certainly the HVAC equipment is getting to the age where we're going to have to be looking at doing something with that as well. But like Bill said, the parking lot certainly needs some serious attention to. The roof needs some attention, and we should be thinking about some funds in the future of replacing some of the HVAC equipment. So,
Mr. Linder?
Would it make sense to do some of these things once the Sugar River leaves, and before next tenant, potentially we could get higher monthly revenue from it because of that?
It would. I did not pursue doing something with the parking lot simply because I didn't know what direction we're going here. We have, I've explored the parking lot structure, and certainly it's not a candidate to just go in and pulverize the parking lot and overlay it with new pavement. We dug several test holes in the parking lot. We only got some places less than 3 inches of base course under that asphalt. That's why it's failing. So certainly the parking lot is a prime candidate that we, in my opinion, is high on the priority list, and then the roof. So, and
I don't know, does that, sorry.
Mr. Linder?
Does that, I mean, we get revenue from that, and we're using that revenue to make improvements to the building, so does that affect the budget? Can we just do that without
Mr. Burns?
modifying the budget?
Depending on the cost of the improvements, we, for the 2014 budget, I believe we have $30,000 of net revenue coming into the debt service fund. Annual rent is approximately 55,000. Obviously, that's going to be affected if the church were to leave before the end of the year, but we do have some funds within there for facility-related items. I think if there is generally interest in us holding on to this property and looking at a release of the property, I can work with Mr. Reeder and our finance director, both at looking at what balance of funds we have, cost estimates, and then we can put together some information of, we'll need to decide kind of how much we want to put into that facility and how long of a lease term we're potentially looking at here. Obviously, we don't want to put in a ton of costs if we're only looking at a year or two. If we're looking perhaps 4 or 5 years, then maybe some of these other improvements may be warranted.
Mr. Linder?
One last question then, since you got the commercial assessor coming in, Paul Musser, for the BACT building, does it just make sense to get a price on this building? I thought I remembered 8 years ago or so, it was $800,000 or something. I don't know if it's quite that much anymore, but just to get a ballpark on what the building is worth.
Mr. Burns?
Might be interesting to know.
Yeah, we can certainly see if we can get a ballpark and have that conversation with him and see where he would estimate that it would be.
Okay, I am tentatively on the fence of keeping in and getting the revenue on a yearly basis, but I think it'd be interesting to know that value.
Okay, other questions or comments? It is something we are, mid-July, and they're looking at being out the end of August, as Bill indicated. The last conversation I had with them, it was they made arrangements for services for the first 2 weeks in September elsewhere, so that they could be doing some construction and hopefully by the third Sunday start using the other facility. So we should be looking at moving quickly on this, otherwise we're going to have a vacant facility. Other questions or comments? Otherwise, I think staff has enough to move forward. Seeing no other questions, we will move on. We have approval of operator licenses. Ms. Schofield, please.
A list of all the operator licenses for approval this evening was distributed, including their applicant name and their establishment where they'd be working.
I move to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Reekie. Any questions on the operator's licenses? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries, and the operator licenses have been approved. We are to announcements. Do we have any announcements, Mr. Steiner?
Thank you, Mayor. The Park Department continues their concerts in the park, July 17th. It's on Thursday, and for the following 2 Thursdays through the month of July. The concert starts at 6 p.m. It's in the band shell at Harriet Park, which is what we call a shelter. But it's very nice. Families gather under the trees, kids play in the park, goes till about 8 p.m. for the rest of this month on Thursdays. We have a little party for our outgoing city worker, Mr. Chris Nye, our program director for the past 10 years plus, and it will be on Friday. It will be a informal affair, but some of us will get a chance to talk about him and praise him and wish him good luck on his senior director job that he's accepted at Fort Atkinson. And it's not going to upset his family, and he's going to be able to commute the same kind of time commute as he made to Verona. So I'm really, really happy for him. And Chris has done a very good job. And I praised him a lot during the transition of our senior directors. He and our Becky did an outstanding job, and it's been going very well over there. And a few of you have been over there. I know all of you should go over there sometime for an activity and check what's going on, because the numbers that are reported to the senior commission by our director are outstanding. I mean, between 1,600 and 1,700 people a month are coming to programs. And Mr. Nye has been a part of this. So if you have time, Friday, 1 o'clock, 1:30, come over and give him a kiss and a hug. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Other announcements? Ms. Reekie?
Just wanted to announce that Liz Doyle and I will be having a listening session this coming Saturday, the 19th, right here in this room at 11 a.m. So again, that's Saturday the 19th at 11 right here in the council chambers. I hope anyone who wants to is able to come. The topic will generally be on recreational activities in Verona, but of course we'll talk about whatever people would like to talk about as well.
Thank you. Other announcements this evening? Seeing no other announcements, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Touche. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Doyle. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.